Hey.
Hey.
Hello. Hello.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Hello. We're getting better at this. We're finally seeing that red square in the corner of the screen to say you are live. So, hi everybody. My name's Claire Kennedy. I am the founder and CEO of Kennedy Street. Our new charity, which is we've just received charitable status for, and this is my gorgeous husband. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Kevin Kennedy. I'm the patron of Kennedy Street. Who are we? Well, we are a peer-led charity, which means that everyone who works for us or volunteers for us is in recovery, which means basically we have heard it all. And if you need recovery or know someone who may be in trouble at the moment during the lockdown, or even coming out of the lockdown is very anxious, then we're the people to speak to. And because of the lovely lottery people, we have now a dedicated phone line, which is 01273 758 561, or you can email us at clare@KennedyStCiO.co.uk.
Yeah, thank you, Kev. And like Kev said, you know, the purpose of our charity is to support people who have their hand up for recovery. Some of our volunteers aren't in recovery. Kev just said all of our volunteers are in recovery. That bit isn't true. He doesn't know that bit. But we do have business volunteers who aren't in recovery, but who support the work that we do. So, yeah, we've got a real lovely selection of amazing people who come and get involved with our project. So the reason why we do these talks every week is so we can help you as an audience understand a little bit more about recovery. And since the lockdown particularly, I've been doing this sort of stuff in the community for 20 years, supporting people into recovery. And since the lockdown, so for the last 9 weeks, our inquiry rate as a project has gone up from 5 inquiries a week to 20 inquiries a day. So you can see the level of need in that response. And a lot of those people that are ringing in are family members. So family members that are struggling with somebody else's addiction. And I'm really passionate about this particular subject. That's where I started my journey all those very many years ago, was by asking for help. I didn't know that there was such thing. I didn't know family members were eligible for support or that there was anyone out there that might be able to help. And what we want to tell you is that there is lots of support out there. And we've got an amazing lady come to have a chat with us today called Julie. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about Al-Anon. She's going to share her experience, strength and hope with you. And she's also going to tell you a little bit more about Al-Anon and what and how Al-Anon can support you as somebody who might be affected by a family member's addiction or even a friend's addiction, you know, because there's a lot of us affected by one person's active addiction. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to the lovely Julie and let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her story. So Julie, welcome to Kennedy Street Live.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Claire and Kevin, for inviting me. It's really kind of you. So I'm Julie and I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. I joined Al-Anon in 1993. And a bit like you just said there, Claire, I didn't know there was help for family members. So my story is I grew up in what I now know to be an alcoholic home. My dad was a heavy drinker. I was the eldest of 5 girls. And how that really played itself out in our house was that my dad would go out drinking regularly, often, daily. He'd disappear for weeks on end. And I would see my mum in great pain. Financially, she'd be upset. There wasn't enough money. I guess now I know there would be a lot of shame. We'd be invited to things as a family. My dad would be disappearing. Lots of embarrassing situations. You know, my dad was he was quite a funny drunk when he was out and about. but he wasn't in the home. In the home, he was volatile, aggressive, short-tempered, or didn't engage with us. That was one of the hardest things. He would not engage. But as a child, his sense of humour would embarrass me. He thought he was a comedian, a clown, centre of the stage. But as a young girl, I'd be really embarrassed by some of his behaviours. And all I could see was my mum's pain, that my dad's behaviours impacted my mum, and it caused nothing but pain. And I remember vowing I would never marry a man that drank. I didn't like that, and I would not marry somebody like my dad. I don't know what it was with my dad. If ever I had boyfriends or friends in the home, he'd be really like off with them, aggressive. So somewhere in my wisdom, age 17, I made a decision that the next man I met, I'd be leaving home with. And that's what I did. I met somebody at 18, and whether he knew it or not, I don't think he had much of a choice, but this man was going to be my partner, and I would work hard on making him my partner. And I don't think he had a lot of choice in it. I captured him. That was it. I'd chosen him, and he was to be it. And I believe this guy didn't drink. So we'd go to bars and clubs in Manchester, and he'd get himself a little Vic Orange. And I thought he was not a drinker because he told me he didn't drink. And because I now know I was like a codependent, I was broken, we met in September of 87, and by December of 87 we were living together, and by February of 88 I was pregnant with my first child. So barely really knew each other intimately. You know, I knew what I thought I saw. I didn't really know him very well, but what I did know was he was this big personality. He was well known in Manchester. He knew all the doormen. We never had to queue anywhere. We were taken to the front of the queue. Life was very glitzy and glamour. And for me, growing up in a family that had no money, this guy had money, and that was attractive. You know, I thought, I'm not going to have to worry about money. We're going to be okay. But also, what I started to witness was when we went out and he drank, ultimately there'd be some sort of violence, fighting, scuffles with people. There'd always be something. But I just thought, oh, it doesn't bother me. It's outside of the home. Who cares? I then had my child, and we were obviously living together, and I quickly, 6 months into having my first daughter, I was pregnant with my second, and those behaviours that were outside of the home started to tipple in the home. But I never ever thought it was drink related. I'd grown up with drinkers, so my understanding was that's what men did. Real men drank. I was told that somewhere as a child. My uncles were rugby players. They all drank, and that was the circle that, you know, men drank. My granddad drank, my dad drank, men drank. Drinking wasn't the issue. What was the issue was my partner's behaviours, and if I could have waved a magic wand and stopped his behaviours, I would have done. Because I didn't understand. And what also I didn't understand, growing up in the family that I grew up in, I didn't recognise I had choices. So somewhere in my mindset, I'd thought I had, the message was, you've made your bed, now lie in it. So I had these two children, and I really thought I had no choice to make any changes around what was going on. And when I did make changes, or when I tried to voice changes to my partner, it was like dismissed and put down, and what do you know? And, you know, we've got a business, or it was spun round, you know, look at all we've got. What are you not happy with? And I wasn't happy. I was desperately unhappy. I'd lost sight of who I was as a person. I would measure how he was. So if he came in with a happy smile on his face, then I was going to be happy. If he came in looking angry, then I'd be angry. If he was worried about something, then I'd be worried about it. And little by little, drip by drip, what I now know as codependency, I completely lost sight of who I was. You know, I often share that in my first meeting of Al-Anon, the only thing I knew for sure was my first name was Julie. I couldn't tell you what I like to wear, what I like to eat, what I'd like to read, what I'd like to watch at the cinema. I didn't know. It was all through my partner. What does he like? What does he like to read? Is that okay by him? I was completely a shadow, really, of my former self. What I knew desperately was that I was a mum, and I didn't want my daughters to have the same upbringing that I'd had. I just knew that for sure. We often had police at our door because my husband seemed to thrive on fighting. He seemed to get a thrill from it. I think he was addicted to that as he was to drinking. And so we'd often have police at our door, and nothing, in my opinion, seemed to stop him. Nothing. In fact, I could probably say I know as many police stations in Manchester as I do the pubs. I've probably been to every one to pick him up, to collect him, to bring him out. He'd be arrested, drunk and disorderly, and I'd be there to pick him up. He'd be arrested for driving drunk. I'd pick him up, collect the car. So I constantly rescued his behaviour. He had family business, and he wouldn't turn in for work, and I'd go in his place, and his brothers would be going absolutely mad, and I'd be going, oh, he just didn't feel very well. So I'd cover for him often, because he'd be that hungover from the night before that I'd be covering. And we'd probably been together 5 years, and this isn't excuses, but different things impact different people. And he lost his sister in a car accident, and then he lost his dad, I don't know, 9 months later, and his drinking increased, and in that drinking his violence in the home began, and I knew I couldn't stay and live with that, but I didn't know there was a way out. I didn't know what to do. I'd seen my mum with my dad for many years, and my mum is still with my dad, and I just thought, I don't know, there's something about Catholic upbringing, that you've made your bed, you lie in it, this is your lot. Where do you go with 2 children? What do you do? How does it change? I just didn't know I had options, and that today makes me feel sad, that I didn't know. I really, that concept of choices, and I could make a different decision, wasn't in my world, wasn't in my awareness. And I was sort of like a headless chicken. I could feel that I was becoming mentally ill. They talk about insanity, and I was becoming insane. I was anxious, sick. And then I'd become an absolute fiery, aggressive, fighting. I would control this behaviour. He would do as I said, and it was laughable. I had no control. But that's sort of where the disease of alcoholism took me. That I was insane. My whole world revolved around him and what is he doing. And how was I going to fix him? And how was I going to make us happy? And if he just did as I said, things would be okay. But I never for a minute thought it was a drink that was the issue. And at some stage, as I say, I felt desperately unwell. And somewhere in it all, because I didn't think I had choices, I considered suicide. I can remember thinking that would be a way out. But actually, the thought of leaving my daughters with him and his family was not an option. And the depths of pain and sadness and insanity and where it took me to, it crossed my mind to take the life of me and my 2 daughters. And I pondered that for a while. And then I don't know what changed. And I decided the best option was to take his life. And I began plotting regularly on how to do that. And because of the circle that we'd mixed with, I'd asked a gunman to shoot him, and he wouldn't do that because he knew him, and that made me scared because I thought, now he's going to go and report me to him. So then I began this mission of mashing tablets in his drink and hoping he would die. And I don't know why I did. I shared it with my mum, and my mum now is a member of Al-Anon, and she'd been a member for Al-Anon for 2 years. And she went white. Her face drained in colour, and she said, "What in God's name are you doing?" So I was really annoyed with her, because I thought, has she not heard what's been going on in this house for the last 5 years? She'd have done the same. And there was something in her face that thought, maybe this isn't normal. Maybe this is not okay. Maybe there's another way. And it was her that told me about Al-Anon. So I went to Al-Anon, and there was something in the meeting. They have a little book called Courage to Change. And I kept looking at this book thinking, oh God, I need this courage to change. It's me that has to do something. I'm not a prisoner. I've been telling myself I'm a prisoner. I'm not a prisoner. I have choices. This is what these women are telling me. And I told these women what I'd been planning and what I'd been doing. And as I looked up, some of them were nodding. And it was like, oh my God, I'm not on my own. I'm not the only one that has this insane thinking that this is the only way to stop these behaviours that have been going on in my house. So within 3 months of me joining Al-Anon, I left and went to a refuge. I took my 2 daughters with me. And I kept up the Al-Anon meetings, and I kept knowing it didn't matter what was going to happen, I was going to be okay. Because within those meetings, I saw hope. And there were people that were in worse situations than me, and there were people that were in better situations than me, but they all had this common denominator, that they'd lived with an alcoholic, and all that chaos and craziness that alcoholism and addiction brings, that lives are not normal when you live with that. And as a family member, you're not normal. I was not normal. I was insane. I was absolutely barking mad, insane, obsessed, compulsive, addicted to the alcoholic in my life. And these other women were telling me that they'd done the same. And you know, that I was dreading it. I thought, oh God, when I leave here, I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be arrested, and you know, this is the end. But nobody broke my confidence in those meetings. In fact, they told me that I had choices, that I didn't have to live with it. And it was that courage and that strength that I was able to leave my partner. My story was, the house was in my name. It was mortgaged in my name, bizarrely. And I had to go back to this house. So I went back to the house knowing that if my partner was to harass me, I had an injunction, and I knew if he was to harass me, then I would just move further away and I would sell the property. Anyway, he continued to harass me, and police were involved. And one night of absolute hell, I'd been going to a place in Manchester called Damascus Road, a guy called Bonzo, and this man had said to me, I can't do anything to help you, but if your partner ever needs help, this place is he can go. So this night of awfulness, violence, I phoned the police, but I also passed my partner this number of Bonzo, and that was 1994, and that was the day my partner had his last drink, and has been sober now for 27 years a day at a time. So the two of us, we were so well surrounded by people that loved us and cared for us, and people that walked before us in this Al-Anon programme, that we began to be reparented almost by people of Al-Anon, and him people of AA. And we courted for a year of early recovery. I stayed in the house, and he stayed at his mum's, and we did what was suggested that we were to do. So we followed direction, because what we recognised, both of us, we're both very self-willed, run riot types of people. We know best, and yet what we recognised is neither of us knew. We were like fumbling in the dark, 2 children fumbling in the dark, bringing up 2 babies, and really not a clue, no clue. So I carried on working my Al-Anon programme. and he worked his AA program, and we got married in recovery. We got married probably 18 months, 2 years into recovery, and we work and surround ourselves in this 12-step program. So we do what it says on the tin, because for me, I'd witnessed lots of dysfunctional, codependent relationships. You know, my mums and my nanas, you know, that song "Love Your Man," that's what I saw role modelled, that the men were kings in the family. Whatever a man said happened, and I recognised that didn't need to be. And my girls have been my driving force, really. Often I often think, is this right? Is it okay? No, it's not. So I make those changes based on some of that, really. So in recovery, I realised that I was more than I ever thought I was. I studied. I began to study. I did a counselling qualification. I began to work in the addiction field. And I began to get to know myself, which, you know, from a dysfunctional family, all I knew, my job was to care for others, to make other people happy. As long as they were okay, I was okay. And that happened in my home. You know, it was a great training ground for how to be in an alcoholic relationship, because I witnessed my mum doing it. I witnessed my nanas doing it. I witnessed my aunties doing it. You know, my very first meeting I went to, I walked in and my auntie was sat across me, and I couldn't work out why. Well, of course, why? My uncle needs recovery. You know, of course, why? This is a family illness. I have been impacted by alcoholism because it's a family illness. It runs in my family. It runs in my husband's family. So I need like daily maintenance. I need to carry on going to meetings. Not because I'm scared that my husband will drink. Today, I really acknowledge my powerlessness in that. He will or he won't, but that's his business, not mine. But I go because I know of my defects of character. You know, I can be controlling, I can be manipulative, I can be dishonest. You know, if I'm put in a corner, I can feel shamed and I'll come out fighting. So I've grown up in Al-Anon. I've learned different ways to interact with the world that are healthy, that are not blaming, that I can take responsibility for me. And that's something that Al-Anon has taught me, teaches me, allows me to be. You know, they often say, I hear it say in the AA rooms, that it's life beyond my wildest dreams. It is for me in Al-Anon. You know, I look where I would have been. They talk about, you know, for an alcoholic, there's 3 places they go: institutions, jails, or death. Same for me. I see my path. I see my path. I could have ended up in jail, prison so easily. I could have ended up dead. And I could have ended up in some sort of mental institution, because that obsessing about the alcoholic, you know, my thinking was obsessive. I've done crazy things. I've took meals to him in pubs because he's not come home, because that's what I thought a happy family would look like, a family that sat at a table and ate together. So I took the meal to the pub, only to be humiliated by all the rest of the drinkers around him, because it's funny, I'm entertainment now at this stage, ranting and raving. You know, I've stalked him. I've done all sorts of crazy. So I recognise my mental fragility, really, in living with an alcoholic and living and growing up with alcoholism. So for me, Al-Anon is going to be a lifelong program for me. And today I do service, I give it away, I tell my story when I'm asked to tell my story, because it reminds me of who I was and where I've come to. And I'm not perfect and I'm not special, you know, I'm full of flaws. But if I work this program on a daily basis, I'm a better person for it. I'm a nicer person for it. So I've so much gratitude to the Al-Anon program, so much. And it's good for me to be reminded, really, of how it used to be, because it was dark, it was depressing, and it was chaotic. And I recognise I created some of that chaos, and I used to think it was all him. I think stood next to an alcoholic, you look pretty well brushed up. You know, for me, I'd be little Miss Sweetums, smiling, aren't I good? And he'd be acting out like a wild man. I'd act out wild when it suited me. You know, I'd press his buttons. I would use him. I would say to people, if you don't do what I want, I'll tell him. I used him as a threat, you know, as a bargaining tool. And I know that today, you know, that was my level of dishonesty. But I was equally as badly behaved as the alcoholic was in my world. The difference was he seemed to be tenfold. He seemed to be out there with it. But I was cunning and baffling and manipulative highly. So I'm aware of those behaviours, and for me, I am grateful for the programme of Al-Anon, that I will carry on working and doing to the best of my ability for as long as I can. And I think service is a real gift to have been asked to share with you, and I just thank you both for asking them, for listening. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julie. We've met before, and you know, I admire you as a lady. I admire you as a mother, as a wife, as somebody who's in recovery, who gives tirelessly. And I know that you give tirelessly. You know, you acts of service to Al-Anon and to the wider community too. You know, amazing story, so inspirational. We've got loads of really positive comments. I will show some of those at some point. Yeah. Do you want to say anything, Kev?
Yeah, that first off, I'd just like to say thank you. It's always a privilege to hear someone's story like that, and very brave and honest. And for me personally, that, I mean, I've never been to an Al-Anon meeting, and it's always been that AA and then Al-Anon. Almost regarded as the enemy somehow, which is obviously not true. And listening to that story was just eye-opening for me. Your honesty was unbelievable. I never really thought of it from that angle before, from your angle. I'm talking as personally as an addict, and I thought that was just a stunning share, really. And from where you've come from, I mean, that is I think I'm so happy it had a nice ending. You know, I was thinking, oh, where's this gonna go? Oh no, this is gonna be horrible. You know, I was thinking, oh no, but I'm so glad that that it's all sort of come together again, and your partner has been in good recovery for a number of years now. There's one question I do want to ask, though. Firstly, a recurring theme during your show was you made your bed, now lying in it, which I think is a very common misunderstanding. You know, you don't have to lie in your bed. You can change things, and I think that's very important for anyone who's listening. Who's watching today, who is in that situation you were in, and that craziness of I might have to kill my partner or kill myself or kill somebody, which is just lunacy. I think it's very important, and your message was very powerful. But the other thing I wanted to ask is, when you went to Al-Anon, were the men in the meetings as well?
There is men, absolutely. There's fewer men than women, but there is men, and I've met some men that shared similar stories to mine. So yeah, absolutely, there is men, and it's accessible for men, definitely. And I think men, you know, have the same issues living with addiction, alcoholism as women do, and maybe there's more shame around it for a man as well, you know, that the partners, women, might be alcoholic. I think shame often stops people stepping forward. I know for me it was shame. There was somewhere in my thinking that I thought I was supposed to be a better wife, you know, or if I was a better wife, he'd come home earlier. So there's that shame in somehow. Now, I do think that came from my childhood. And a denial, great denial that alcoholism was the issue. Massive denial, you know, it was everything else. You know, so I'd make up these little stories of what happy families look like. So a happy family was the man that come home and eat tea with you. And I used to say, you just come home and have your tea first and then go out and drink. So I had this illusion of what a normal family looked like, and tried to enforce it. And it was madness. When I look back now, it was madness. I was clueless. I really was clueless.
But you don't know what you don't know, do you?
No.
And I know for me, my denial obviously was in active alcoholism for a great number of years. And even though I knew there was a problem, the last thing I wanted was to be married to an alcoholic. It was like the shame and the guilt. It was like I'd rather have been married to a madman.
Yes.
And that was the insane bit. And that's when really your thinking's not right.
Yes.
When you think, actually, I'd rather be married to somebody who's totally deranged than somebody who's an alcoholic, because the shame and the guilt and the stigma and all of the information that's put out there about alcoholism, we don't hear about recovery. This is why the purpose of our program and everything that we do at our charity is to make recovery visible, to tell the world that recovery, not just for the addict, but for the family members too, does exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've done a beautiful job of portraying that, and I'm so grateful and thankful that your story, has got a really positive, life-changing story, and I know that not all stories are like that, and I know people that do go to meetings that really don't have a tale of transformation to tell about the addict. But what I do know is that people that do get some support for themselves start to change their narrative.
Absolutely.
That's what's really powerful about your story, Julie. I think it's, your transformation, great that your husband got this amazing recovery too. And I think often people don't realise that they have a recovery, that they have a change to make. And it starts with acknowledging that actually we do have choices to make. And we have to step up. There's a step up.
We have an opening in Al-Anon that says you'll come to know happiness whether the alcoholic is still drinking or not. And I know when I left my partner, I'd left him. I didn't leave him and think maybe he'll get recovery. In fact, I didn't think still at that point that he was alcoholic. People used to say to him, oh, maybe he'll get recovery. And I used to go, no, you're not getting it. It's not alcoholic. It's evil. Is evil, is bad. It's not alcoholic, because I couldn't compute the denial and the misunderstanding I had around alcoholism. To me, an alcoholic was those men on the bench with, even my dad wasn't alcoholic. He drank. All men drank. So I just didn't understand what that alcoholism meant. But Al-Anon was saying you'll find happiness whether the alcoholic is drinking or not. And I used to hang on to that. I used to think, this is not about him now. This is about me. And that from a child who at 10 was doing all the housework, taking care of my mum as a surrogate husband, really, in many ways, and taking care of the babies, i.e. my sisters, that revelation, the idea of keeping the eyes on me, was massive for me. It was like, oh wow, this is all about me now. This is new news. And I guess that's where the change started for me. This wasn't about anybody else, what they were or they weren't doing. This was about me and a freedom that I was allowed, because I acted like a prisoner. That's what had happened somewhere along it, and I hadn't been sentenced, and yet I couldn't go out that house unless I'd seek permission or checked it out. I was acting like a prisoner, and I had to do this. I had to go to work because it said so, and I had to do the other because it said so. I really didn't believe I had any choice, and that was the scary part for me of this illness.
And thanks goodness your mum introduced you. I mean, to Al-Anon. I mean, you know, the nature of the anonymous groups is that they are anonymous, and that's why Julie is giving this this testimony anonymously, because of the nature of the groups. We, you know, try to respect other people's anonymity, and as well family members. You know, it's really important. And hence the reason why we are so visible and vocal about recovery, because we believe people need to know that recovery is optional, and that it is available, and that if you're willing to put the hard work in, and you've just heard that the lengths that Julie had to go to get well herself, and you know, with no expectation of her addict getting well. I think that's the critical. For me, that was so intrinsic with my getting better. Was that I had absolutely no expectation that anyone else was going to get better. No guarantees about anything, other than if I was willing to put some work in and invest time and energy in learning this new way of living life on life's terms, then you know, that was guaranteed. But what I wanted to ask you as well, because of the nature of the anonymous group, there's a lot of mystery around it, and so I wanted to ask some questions that I know a lot about Al-Anon, I know a lot about all the fellowships, but I wanted to just give the audience an opportunity to find out a little bit more about where Al-Anon has come from. So we've come up with a few questions I hope you don't mind us asking. If you can answer them, great. If you can't, then that's fine too. So how did the fellowship of Al-Anon come about?
Oh, right. Okay. So it's really exciting. So Al-Anon is the sister program of AA. So Bill W. set up AA in 1935, and his wife Lois used to sit in the kitchen as all the guys, mainly guys at that time, there was a few women alcoholics, but mainly men, would sit in the kitchens and have the meetings. And the women started to realise that they were sat sharing about the alcoholics. So they were starting to understand the nature of the alcoholic, the personality of the alcoholic, but more importantly, their personality. It's almost like we dance. It's almost like the AA is able to subconsciously find the Al-Anon, and the Al-Anon subconsciously finds the AA that they can fix and caretake for and enable. So from that, Lois, Bill W.'s wife, and her friend, Anne B., created Al-Anon, and we use the same 12 steps and traditions that AA use. So you know, AAs talk about defects of character. Al-Anons talk about their defects of character. Our first step is we accept that we're powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. So whilst I was fighting and battling with my husband and his drinking, I wasn't accepting powerlessness. I thought I could change him. And when I stopped that and stepped out of that, change happened differently than I ever imagined. So Al-Anon started in 1951, and AA started, I think it was in 1935. So we've branched. We're a sister fellowship of AA. We use the same steps and traditions.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so you've answered the second question, which is how long has it been running? So it's been started in 51, and there's a lot of, so people that do hear of Al-Anon and AA, there's people, I often hear this all of the time. Oh, I'm not going there. It's all about God.
Yeah.
A huge, big stigma about this word God.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, and when you read the 12 steps, God is in most of them. So I get why people initially who haven't been inside the meetings would be put off. It's not a religious program at all, but it is a spiritual program. So we talk about God, finding a God of your understanding, and that literally is what that means, a God of your understanding. So initially people might use God and think good orderly direction, or I've heard in AA, group of drunks. But for me, there's something about, because I was so self-seeking in a way. Even in my caretaking, it was all about making me feel better. So it's something for me about just looking outside of myself, you know, out of my own self-will, and looking for guidance, and that can take its shape and form in any way. So for me, initially, my God was the group of other women that had been through a similar experience, and I sort of trusted that they were saying the best for me. And then slowly I've developed a relationship with the God of my understanding. But when I first went to Al-Anon, I was brought up a Catholic, and because of the lifestyle I was living, I was filled with guilt and shame, and I just thought, God won't want me in there. You know, I'm so shitty that there's no way I'm going to be accepted by this God thing. But actually, it's nothing to do with a church God, a religion God. It's to do with a spiritual way of living. And it does require change to work this program of recovery. It is asking us to change some of our thinking, some of our behaviours. So yeah, it's a spiritual influence, you know, which feels very different to me than a religion.
Yeah. And
If
I
that
think
makes sense.
it does make absolute sense, and perfectly explained, because I know that is one of the big things that people come at me with, and you know, oh, I'm not going there, it's a religious thing. And it's like, when you explain to them that it's not actually a religious thing, it's a spiritual program that looks at your mental, physical and spiritual condition, which is, it's, you know, a threefold condition, isn't it? It's all elements of our life. And why on earth would you not invite a power greater than you to get you, to give you some help? And the power of the group is a really, I think that's such an important part of the journey, because we do need to connect. You know, we spend a lot of time disconnected from ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that the shame of living with alcoholism, the isolation that begins to happen, you know, for me, I felt I didn't fit in the world. I felt so different. I felt everybody knew about my husband's behaviours and were judging him. If they weren't, I was. And you know, as a child, I didn't have friends over because we felt different. I felt different. Nobody else's dad acts like that. So little by little, that disconnect from the world feels, and trust. I didn't trust anybody. Nobody was trustworthy around me. And that wasn't true, but that's how I felt. How could I trust anybody? I didn't trust myself. So yeah, it's about that reconnection with some sort of spiritual presence, being.
A greater God, isn't it?
Greater God, yeah.
Something better and bigger than all of us that can help in some way, shape or form. And like you say, if that comes through somebody else who's been down that road before you, who's got a level of sort of freedom, it's like, you know, you hang on their coattails, don't you? Sort of
absolutely.
They've got what I want, so I'm going to talk about with them.
Yeah, I saw hope in people. I thought that some of these people are still living with active alcoholism, active addiction. I want what they've got. And it was hope, and it was smiling and laughing, and yet they were still living in the same dire straits. I thought, no, I want a little bit of what they've got, and they're saying it's available to me. I don't have to do anything spectacular. I just have to rock up each week to these meetings, show up, be there, be present, and listen and trust. Yeah.
And commit, I think, as well. I think for me, it was really important that I understood that going to one or two meetings of any fellowship is not going to work.
No.
It's just not going to work. You're going to get a little bit of information or misinformation, because you always listen to the differences at first. You don't know to listen for the similarities. And it takes repetition. It takes going back. It takes commitment to wanting. And I think that's often comes in the shape of the gift of desperation. It's like, you know, your life was in a desperate place, and you were willing to keep going and keep learning and keep listening. I think that's so important. Did you want to ask anything, Kev? I'm rattling. I've talked to Julie forever.
Oh, I can't hear you, Kev.
I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate what this is about. If people have just joined this a bit late, if you're we've just heard Jill's story, which was absolutely amazing and very powerful. But if you've just tuned into this and your partner, their drinking or drug use is affecting you and your family, then there's somewhere for you to go. You haven't made your bed and you don't have to lie in it. And it's Al-Anon, and it's underneath here. Please get in touch with us. And there's some great messages. Thank you, Jane.
Let's show some of these. We've got hang on a minute, how do I show them? Here we go. We've got Jane who's saying, I'm going to let my husband watch this. Thank you so much. Fabulous as always. That's really kind. Thank you, Jane.
Can I just interrupt? And Julie, if you get in touch with us, we definitely can help you. We won't put your message up, obviously, but please get in touch. And thank you for reaching out. That's a brave thing to do. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you struck a chord with a lot of people, Jules. And that's the beauty of what it is that you're doing, and your generous heart and coming and being of service, talking your truth. People don't fully understand that. That's why when you've been given the gift of recovery, that a huge part of it is sharing that with others, so they too can take those tentative steps.
Can I just ask a question? Has this lovely recovery, has that trickled down to your daughters as well?
Yeah, it has. I mean, both my daughters, this is something I guess that might be important. Both my daughters attended Al-Anon. So Al-Anon was set up by Al-Anon for children of alcoholics. So that was a great support, because although my husband's in recovery, there is traits and the children of alcoholics. So it was really important for me that they got support when they were young, a place to talk about because they were different again, because they had a dad that was in AA, which meant they were different than some of the girlfriends. Their dad didn't drink. We didn't do things that some people would do. So it was important that we embrace it as a family illness that's in recovery. So there's also Al-Anon.
Would you tell us a little bit more about Al-Anon? We don't have Al-Anon in Brighton. I think they used to have Al-Anon, but I don't think that they could grow the fellowship. So they don't have Al-Anon anymore in Brighton. But could you tell us just a little bit more about Al-Anon, please?
Yeah, of course I can. So anybody over the age of 12 is allowed into an Al-Anon meeting if there is no Al-Anon in their area. So if a 12-year-old wanted to go to an Al-Anon meeting, they'd be more than welcome. Because we have so few Al-Anon meetings. But Al-Anon meetings used to be run by sponsors, Al-Anon sponsors, normally be 2 Al-Anon people in the room, and they would just share, so young people would be able to go and share their worries. So parents might or might not be in recovery, but they would be able to share their concerns and the impact of growing up and living with an alcoholic and how that impacted them. So it'd be a real safe sharing space for young people, and that's somewhere where my girls went to and have been to Al-Anon on occasion. They don't attend regularly, and that's okay, but I hear them talk a program of recovery, and they challenge me when they know that I'm not.
You taught them well.
Sometimes.
Oh, my girls are the same. Our girls have been to an Al-Anon, but they know recovery.
Yes, absolutely.
They pull us all the time, don't they, Kev?
Yeah. It's like, because I think my dysfunctional behaviours are so outrageous to them, when I'm not on track, when I'm not working a spiritual program, it's pretty obvious to people around me, and they're quick to tell me.
Right, isn't it? And do you know what's beautiful as well, which I think, I mean, our kids, I always say my kids when I'm telling you something really fabulous about them, but really our kids. Our kids are that they speak about recovery with no stigma. They don't look at the shame and the guilt. It's completely missed them. They talk about mummy and daddy being in recovery, being recovering addicts and alcoholics, and you can see the look on their friends' faces. They go, it's like, I can't believe that you've just said that.
Yeah.
But it's powerful. It's powerful stuff. Our kids know more about recovery than, thanks God, than addiction.
Yes.
But they think recovery is normal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
It is great. And the more information that's out there, the better. Yeah, did you want to ask anything else, Kev?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, really. And you've reached a lot of people today with that story. And I just, again, I can't thank you enough. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me. It's been my privilege and honour. It really has. And I just think if it helps one person listening, and I just think I wanted to say as well that for people that are listening, that it's just something about, I've done nothing special to get here other than go to a meeting. You know, I don't, just thinking when I was 25 when I went to my first meeting, I felt like worthless on the floor. I would look at people like you two and think, oh, it's all right for them too. They've got it made, you know, they're together, they're perfect. My esteem was so low. And I think that's the starting point really for people, that, you know, you'd be made very, very welcome. That there's no story that can't be helped in Al-Anon, that it's so embracing to us all, and it's not judgmental. And I don't think there's any story that would shock that we've not heard before. You know, everybody is welcome.
Yeah. So if there are people watching this amazing interview and just, you know, really getting a lot of identification, and they want to reach out, how would they go about? During the pandemic, it's a bit different, I know, but how would, if there's somebody watching and they want help, how would they go about getting some help, Julie?
Yeah, well, that website you've put on there would take them onto the Al-Anon website. There's lots of Zoom meetings going on in different areas, and it's great for people. So if people, you know, wanted to remain anonymous, didn't want to expose their alcoholic in their world, you could come over to Manchester and do a meeting and nobody'd know you, and, you know, vice versa. So it's quite accessible at the minute. Something great about it. I'm happy to pass on my number if anybody wanted to contact me. I'm more than happy to do that. But that number there is a starting place, looking at Al-Anon, and I could try and send some Zoom meeting lists over to you both too. I could do that.
But I just say it's not just Manchester. This as well. It's nationwide.
Yes.
Yeah,
Worldwide.
It's worldwide, isn't it?
Yes,
global.
Yeah, it is global.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing. This is why I'm really passionate about all of the fellowships that we do have, because for me, you know, there are lots of treatment centres, there are therapists, there are this. I think they all serve a purpose. Don't get me wrong. I really do think these places are absolutely critical, but in the long game, in the big plan, you have to have continuity in care. You have to have
maintenance. Maintenance.
You need to find people. You need to have those people that love and care for you, and that you can start to build relationships with and friendships with. And I think the fellowships are really, really, really you know, under advertised. I understand that not everybody wants to get the message out there, but we want to use this platform to get the message out there that, you know, there are some amazing fellowships. And like Julie said, this is global. I had somebody reach out to me on a telephone call, a direct message it was actually, off the back of one of these talks. And this guy was in Peru, and he was struggling with alcoholism. And within half an hour, I was able to virtually connect him to Alcoholics Anonymous in Peru. And the person that we connected him to actually lived half an hour away from where he lived in Peru. It was just unbelievable. So, and there's nowhere else you could do that. There's nowhere. And I know I could do the same with Al-Anon. I could reach out to you who might know somebody. If somebody rang me from America, I know you'd probably know somebody in America. It's great.
It is. It's fab. It's fab. And it's free. You know, that's the other thing. It's free. you know, and there's no register. You come and go as you please. Nobody's going to say, why have you not been back, or you should be here. You come and go as you choose. You take what you like and you leave the rest. It's perfect.
Yeah, and it's very empowering. I mean, you know, that autonomous decision where you go, you know what, actually, I'm going to choose to do something to help myself.
Yeah.
That in itself is so empowering. It's amazing, you know. It is amazing. You get to meet beautiful people like Julie, and many more beautiful people, because you know, there's a lot of them out there who are doing great work and support. And like you say, it's free, but it sets you free too. So it's free.
Absolutely, it's priceless. It is. It's like the gift of serenity that you receive from it is huge, huge.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Loved having you. It's opened Kev's eyes. He's often wondered what goes on in those Al-Anon meetings.
You'll have to come and see. You'll have to come to our open meetings. Come and have a listen. You're welcome.
Anything else before we go, Kev? You're on silent.
I keep forgetting to do that because I was listening so intensely. I keep forgetting to put my mic. I just want to again, you know, say thank you, and if you're struggling, all the help you need is underneath, and it's free. We don't want anything from you, nothing. We just want to help you as well as we possibly can. It's important to reiterate that you know we just want to help. That's all.
Yeah, we can connect people, and you know, we've got great. Julie's just done an amazing public information on Al-Anon, but there's lots of other comments of, you know, people. People are identifying with our talks, and we do get a lot of direct messages and a lot of emails and phone calls off the back of these talks. So please do feel free to reach out to us. Like Kev said, what we offer is absolutely free. We look to connect people to amazing resources like Al-Anon and AA, and there's other fellowships as well for family members. There's Co-Anon, there's Fam-Anon. There's lots and lots of support out there. You just need to know where it is and how to access it, and we can help connect you to those amazing groups. So thank you so much, Julie. We've loved having you. We would love you to come back anytime. And thank you for your honesty and for your inspiration.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Nice to see everybody. See you again soon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.